Backstage in Los Angeles, early 1970s. The hallway was narrow, heavy with heat and cologne, and a man who weighed 415 pounds stood with his arms folded like a door no one could open. People were already whispering his name before he moved. Sylvester Stallone was there that night. Not yet untouchable. Not yet carved into legend. Just another rising figure watching from the side, studying everything. He leaned against a wall, quiet, eyes sharp. Then Bruce Lee stepped into the corridor. He wasn't loud, didn't arrive with noise, just a compact presence in a dark jacket, walking like the floor already belonged to him. The crowd shifted without meaning to, not dramatically, just enough to make space. The big man didn't move. Someone laughed. Someone muttered something about respect. What happened next didn't look like a fight. It looked like a correction. And for a few seconds, nobody in that hallway breathed the same way again. The corridor wasn't meant for crowds. It was built for stagehands, managers, cigarette breaks between acts. But that night it held more than wires and folding chairs. Word had moved faster than anyone expected. Not loud, just passed from mouth to mouth. He's here. Bruce Lee didn't need an introduction. He'd been training since he was 13, long before most of the men in that building had decided who they wanted to be. Years under Ip Man. Years refining something sharper than tradition. Demonstrations where grown fighters left shaking their heads. Not embarrassed, just unsure of what they'd witnessed. You could tell by how people adjusted their posture when he walked past. Shoulders straightened. Conversations softened. Nobody announced his importance. They reacted to it. Sylvester Stallone stood a little behind the cluster of promoters and assistants, arms crossed, watching. He wasn't smiling, but he wasn't tense either. He had that look some fighters have before they step into a ring, not fear, just measurement. He studied the room the way an actor studies lighting, where the shadows fell, who commanded space. And then there was the bodyguard. He filled the hallway in a way architecture couldn't argue with. Thick neck, suit pulled tight across his shoulders. He didn't look like a hired escort. He looked like an obstacle. People stepped around him the way water curves around stone. He'd already been laughing before Bruce arrived. Loud, confident, a kind of laughter that wanted witnesses. When Bruce came through the doorway, the sound thinned. No one told the bodyguard to move. He didn't. Bruce slowed just slightly. Not enough for anyone to call it hesitation. Just enough to register the shape of the man in front of him. His face didn't change. No challenge. No smile. A pause formed between them. It wasn't long, but it was noticed. Somebody behind me cleared their throat. Someone else shifted weight from one foot to the other. The air felt warmer, not because of anger, because of attention. The bodyguard tilted his head down, studying Bruce like you'd study a rumor you didn't believe. Stallone pushed off the wall, not stepping in, just adjusting his angle to see better. Nothing had happened yet. And somehow, everything already had. The bodyguard didn't step aside. Not at first. He let the pause stretch, as if the hallway belonged to him by right of size alone. Up close, he looked even bigger. The kind of build that made door frames seem optional. His jacket pulled at the seams when he shifted his shoulders. Slow, deliberate. Bruce stood in front of him, hands loose at his sides. No stance. No performance. Just waiting. Someone behind the bodyguard muttered something about making room. It wasn't a request, more like a suggestion dressed as a joke. A few quiet laughs followed, thin and uncertain. The bodyguard smiled down at Bruce. Not friendly. Not hostile either. Just amused. Like he'd been handed something small and unexpected. "You in a hurry?" he asked. His voice carried. It wanted the crowd. Bruce looked up at him. Not sharply, not submissively. Just directly. He didn't answer right away. That small delay unsettled more people than the question had. Stallone shifted his weight again, his arms uncrossed. He wasn't intervening. He was observing the distance between them, measuring it. The hallway felt narrower now. The bodyguard lifted one hand and placed it lightly against Bruce's chest. Not a shove. Not even force. Just contact. A quiet line drawn in public. That changed the room. The laughter stopped completely. Bruce glanced down at the hand resting on him, studied it the way a craftsman studies a flaw in wood. His expression didn't move, but something behind his eyes sharpened. He gently removed the hand. Not dramatic, not angry, just precise. A few people exhaled, thinking that might be the end of it. It wasn't. The bodyguard leaned closer, lowering his head as if to hear something private, but he spoke loud enough for half the hallway to catch it. "Show me." 2 words. Not shouted, not whispered, a challenge disguised as curiosity. Bruce didn't square up, didn't raise his voice. He simply adjusted his footing, barely noticeable unless you were watching closely. One foot turned a fraction, his posture aligned. The shift was small. But Stallone saw it, and the bodyguard, still smiling, didn't realize the ground had already changed beneath him. The shift was almost invisible. Bruce didn't widen his stance, didn't raise his hands. From where I stood, it looked like he was simply settling his balance, the way someone does before stepping off a curb. The bodyguard mistook it for stillness. He gave Bruce a light shove, not hard. More of a public nudge, the kind meant to draw another round of laughter. His palm pressed forward with casual confidence. Bruce moved, not backward. Sideways. It was quick, but not frantic. A small pivot. His shoulders slipped off the line of pressure, and in the same breath his hand touched the bodyguard's wrist brief, controlled, almost polite. There was no strike, just redirection. The bodyguard's weight, already leaning forward from the shove, had nowhere clean to go. His heels scraped against the concrete floor. A short, ugly sound. His upper body lurched a fraction too far, and then it happened. A stumble. Not a fall, not dramatic, but undeniable. His free foot shot out to catch himself, and for a second, just a second, his balance wasn't his own. You could see it in his eyes. That flash of surprise, not pain, not fear, just confusion, as if gravity had betrayed him. Bruce released his wrist immediately. No follow-through, no flourish. The bodyguard straightened, face tightening as he regained his posture. His breath came out heavier than before. Not loud, but noticeable in the sudden quiet. No one laughed this time. Stallone didn't move. His gaze had sharpened. He wasn't watching a scuffle anymore. He was watching mechanics. Cause and effect. The bodyguard reset his stance, wider now, more careful. The smile was gone. He rolled his shoulders as if to shake off what had just happened, but the hallway had already registered it. The man who filled the space had been shifted inside it. Bruce stood where he had started, hands loose again, expression unchanged. If anything, he looked calmer than before. Someone near me whispered, "Did you see that?" But no one answered, because they had. And the bodyguard, breathing just a little deeper than he wanted to, realized this wasn't going to be a show for the crowd. It was something else. The air felt heavier now. Not loud, not chaotic, just sharpened. The bodyguard didn't charge. That would have been easier to understand. Instead, he stepped in again, slower this time. Careful. His hands rose halfway, unsure whether this was a joke that had gone too far or something that needed finishing. The hallway felt smaller around them. No one tried to leave. Bruce didn't retreat. He didn't advance either. He simply adjusted, barely perceptible. A shift in angle. His center lined up in a way that looked almost casual. If you didn't know what you were seeing, you'd miss it. The bodyguard reached again, this time with both hands, aiming to grab and control. It was instinct. Bigger men trust contact. They believe once they hold you, it's over. He never secured it. Bruce stepped inside the reach knot, away from it. One hand guided the forearm. The other touched the shoulder. It didn't look forceful. It looked technical, clean. And then the air changed. The bodyguard's torso twisted slightly off-center. Not dramatic. Just enough. His feet lagged behind his upper body by half a beat. That was all it took. His breath broke. A sharp, involuntary exhale as his balance slipped again, this time more visibly. His knee bent awkwardly to recover. For a fraction of a second, he wasn't imposing, he was correcting himself. Bruce released him immediately. No throw, no strike, no spectacle. The bodyguard stumbled one full step back before regaining control. His shoes squeaked against the floor, his face flushed, not from impact, but from exposure. The hallway was silent. Not stunned, not chaotic, just still. Stallone's jaw tightened, not in fear. In recognition. He'd seen fighters lose before. He'd seen men knocked down. This wasn't that. This was something quieter. The bodyguard didn't advance again. He stood there, chest rising heavier now, recalculating. The earlier laughter felt distant, irrelevant. Bruce remained where he was, posture relaxed. He didn't gesture, didn't speak. He simply waited, as if giving the other man space to decide how this would end, and that choice, more than the movement, shifted the power. Because everyone in that hallway understood something now. Size had entered first. Control was leaving last. No one told it to end. It just did. The bodyguard lowered his hands first. Not all at once. Slowly, like he was placing something fragile back on a shelf. His breathing was still heavy, but he tried to steady it, drawing the air in through his nose this time. He didn't look at Bruce right away. He looked at the floor. Just for a moment, that was enough. Bruce gave a small nod, not approval, not victory. Just acknowledgement. Then he stepped past him, close enough that their shoulders almost brushed, but didn't. No tension followed. Only space. The hallway seemed wider again. People shifted, clearing a path without being asked. The bodyguard moved aside fully this time. No hesitation, no comment. Stallone hadn't taken his eyes off them. When Bruce passed, Stallone's expression changed in a way that was easy to miss. It wasn't awe. It wasn't shock. It was interest, deep, focused interest, like he just witnessed something he didn't have language for yet. He pushed off the wall and followed at a distance. Not to interrupt, just to stay near the current that had formed around Bruce. Others did the same. Quietly, behind them, the bodyguard remained still for a few seconds longer than necessary. He adjusted his jacket, rolled his shoulders again, but the earlier ease was gone. The hallway no longer belonged to him. A few people approached him, murmuring things, half supportive, half embarrassed. He nodded without really hearing them. The story had already moved forward without him. Up ahead, Bruce stopped briefly to speak with a promoter. His voice was calm, even light, as if nothing unusual had happened. The promoter laughed nervously at something Bruce said, leaning in closer than before. Respect had rearranged itself. Stallone stood a few feet away, watching Bruce's hands as he spoke, watching how he held eye contact, watching how other men adjusted their tone when addressing him. No one mentioned the stumble. No one needed to. The correction had been clean, quiet, final, and Stallone, arms folded again now, wasn't looking at Bruce like an actor studying a celebrity. He was looking at him like a student measuring a force he hadn't understood until that night. The hallway thinned out slowly. No applause, no raised voices, just people drifting back to where they were supposed to be. Stagehands returned to cables. Assistants resumed quiet arguments about timing. But something in the building had shifted its weight. Bruce didn't linger. He moved through the backstage area with the same calm pace he'd arrived with. No trace of adrenaline in his face, no tightening of the jaw. If you hadn't been in that corridor minutes earlier, you would have thought nothing unusual had happened. But people watched him differently now. They didn't crowd him. They didn't test him. They gave him space the way you give space to something precise. The bodyguard eventually walked the opposite direction. Shoulders still broad. Frame still massive, yet the air around him felt thinner. A few glances followed him, but not the same kind as before. Not impressed. Not intimidated. Measured, Stallone remained where he was for a while. Longer than anyone else. He leaned against the wall again, eyes unfocused for a second, replaying what he'd seen. It hadn't been flashy. There was no slam against concrete. No crash of bodies. Just alignment. Just timing. Just a man losing control of his own balance for a breath too long. Someone near Stallone shook their head and muttered, "Didn't even look like he tried." Stallone didn't answer. He watched Bruce disappear through a doorway at the far end of the corridor, watched the door close softly behind him. The sound wasn't loud, but it felt definitive. In rooms like that, stories usually grow louder with time. Details inflate. Angles sharpen. But the people who were there didn't argue about what they saw. They remembered the silence. They remembered the stumble. And they remembered how quickly the hallway understood who truly occupied it. Some left impressed. Some unsettled. The weight of that pause stayed longer than the noise ever could.